This boy looks like just an ordinary high schooler with a backpack, yet he can solo clear an entire dungeon. This one in particular is filled with colossal orcs that seem impossible to defeat, but Seo Dojun takes out their leader with a single blow. Other orcs try to smash him, but he's too fast and powerful. He crushes them like overgrown cockroaches. From one orc, he loots a rare magic stone that can increase his abilities even more. Pleased with his find, Dojin packs it into his backpack and prepares to leave, but a group of guys from the guild that owns this dungeon find him and are not happy that he cleared it. They have the numerical advantage and are confident that, as high rankers, they can easily defeat some high schooler, but oh boy, they've never been more wrong in their lives. When they try to catch him and put on handcuffs, Dojin shows them a bit of his power. Even though they attack him from all sides with electric shockers, it's all in vain. Dojin easily beats them like a bunch of children. They stand no chance and still can't process what this boy really is. After dealing with that bunch of trash, Dojin casually walks out of the dungeon as if nothing happened. The story begins when monsters infiltrated the world, plunging humanity into despair. People fought until their last breath to protect the place they called home. Among those brave souls was the hero of the story, Carcelian Lavandian, who stood against the menace with unyielding resolve. For many years, he battled countless monsters, piling up corpses with nothing but the blade he carried and without a trace of fear in his heart. Then, one fateful day, he faced Aaron's sworn brother. The battle was brutal, but Lavandian eventually struck him down. Yet, in the aftermath, he too fell in battle. But fate wasn't finished with him. As his soul drifted through an endless void, he encountered a human boy from a distant planet called Earth. The boy's name was Seo Dojin, and he was on the brink of death for reasons unknown. Before dying, he wished to make a final request of Lavandian, but the warrior immediately refused, unwilling to hear it. After all, he just wanted to rest in peace. He had lost his country to monsters, lost his loved ones, and died a wretched death. Still, Seo Dojin wasn't asking for his own life. Though he no longer wished to live, he desperately wanted his family to have a peaceful one. Hearing this, Lavandian finally paused and listened. The boy's eyes lit up with a spark of hope as he mustered the courage to ask. He wanted his family to live in peace. And so, Lavandian accepted. The warrior awakened on Earth, inhabiting the body of the teenage boy, Dojin. Now his mission was clear, to protect Seo Dojin's family. His first step led him to infiltrate Namsan Gate, a sea-crank dungeon. Entry was restricted to registered heroes, but the automated system kept demanding an ID card he obviously didn't have. Without hesitation, he forced his way inside, setting off alarms that blared about an unauthorized intruder. Once inside, he wandered through the dungeon, searching for monsters to slay. That's when he crossed paths with the licensed hero party. With their official gear and authorization, they quickly assumed Dojin was just a lost kid. Since they were heading toward the exit anyway, they offered to guide him out, but Dojin's silence was unsettling. His casual clothes, his simple bag, and his demeanor made him look nothing like a hero. Sure, porters sometimes dressed casually, but his appearance was far too plain. Perhaps he was a porter who'd been abandoned by his party, or maybe something else entirely. Finally, Dojin broke his silence. He admitted he hadn't come with a hero's party, he had entered on his own. One of the heroes sighed, realizing what kind of case this was. He had seen it plenty of times, some naive fool inspired by flashy commercials about heroes rushing headfirst into a gate. But that kind of recklessness only led to death. The man began lecturing, saying that becoming a hero required certification, training, and proper testing. Rookies should stick to F-rank gates, not recklessly barge into key-crank ones where death was nearly guaranteed. But Dojin wasn't interested in advice. He coldly declared he didn't need their help. The hero party was stunned by the boy's sharp tone. They had only tried to help, yet he dismissed them without hesitation. A few of them grew irritated, but their leader raised a hand, telling them to let it go. If the kid didn't want help, then so be it. The leader felt confident the boy would eventually learn the hard way why you don't ignore wise counsel. He figured the kid would soon realize how unforgiving these gates were. Far different from the TV shows that glorified heroes as if they were divine saviors. Soon enough, Dojin came face to face with a giant orc staring him down, ready to devour him alive. The monster launched an attack, only to miss and smash the ground, but Dojin moved so quickly that the orc couldn't even comprehend what had happened. He then balled his fist and delivered a devastating punch strong enough to blow the orc's face clean off. With the monster dead, it was time for loot. First he grabbed the sword the orc had been carrying, then, using that same weapon, he dug into its body and extracted a shiny gemstone. It was only a low-grade magic stone, so insignificant that Dojin never even bothered with them in his previous life, but since he was flat broke now, he had no choice. Suddenly more monsters swarmed the area, enraged at seeing their comrades slaughtered. Dojin spun around and hurled a gemstone so fast it literally blew one of their heads clean off. The other two charged in recklessly, practically begging for death. Dojin was more than happy to oblige. As he tore through them, the scene shifted back to the group of heroes trudging through the dungeon. Their minds were still stuck on the encounter with the young man. The orange-haired woman admitted she was worried about Dojin's safety, fearing he might end up dead, but the leader reassured her that was highly unlikely. If he was some unauthorized intruder, agents from the control center would eventually find him. Those agents were always B rank or above, and since this was only a C rank gate, there was no way he would die here. As long as the kid didn't recklessly charge into battle, his life wasn't in danger. In fact, the leader assumed the arrogant brat was probably trembling in fear, waiting for the agents to save him, but reality was the complete opposite. Dojin was making monsters tremble. With a single punch, prey dropped instantly. His speed was so overwhelming that enemies couldn't even touch him, let alone crush him under their blades. Appearing behind one, he delivered a kick that demolished its head. With all of them down, he collected another sword and proceeded to harvest the magic stones for himself. After filling his bag, he was ready to leave. Still, he was disappointed with the haul nothing but low-grade gems, weighing him down like useless junk. Just then, an agent spotted him and called out to his comrades. Before Dojin could fully turn, the suited men fixed him with a cold, sharp glare. They explained they were from the gate control center and demanded to see his hero registration card. If he was unregistered, he would have to come with them. Dojin didn't respond right away, which only made the agent tense up further. His tone grew even colder as he insisted Dojin cooperate and follow the proper procedures. The only response the suits received was annoyance carved into Dojin's face. The unnecessary drama was killing his mood. Fed up, he simply turned to leave. Since words weren't working, the suits threatened to handcuff him if he refused to comply, warning that physical force could be used if necessary. One of the more impatient agents dared to grab his hand, threatening him with the injuries he'd sustain if he resisted, and insisting that the responsibility would fall solely on his shoulders. The agent urged that it was in everyone's best interest to settle things with words, not violence. But Dojin had heard enough. He snatched the man's hand back and warned him to stop acting like a thorn in his path. The chilling threat made the agent instinctively flinch, a cold shiver racing down his spine. The other two pulled out their magic-infused batons, grade 4 staffs powerful enough to subdue an orc, yet far too weak to injure someone like Dojin. With a sharp twist, he forced the agent's wrist back until the man whined in pain. Dojin then issued a final warning. They should leave now if they didn't want to lose the last shred of dignity they still had. Eventually, the duty-bound suits were forced to retaliate with violence. They swung their staffs, trying their best to land a hit, but none succeeded. Dojin retaliated with brutal precision, driving a crushing blow into one man's back before slamming his fist into another's stomach. Finally, he focused on the bespectacled agent, the last one standing. The man tensed, sensing what was about to happen. In an instant, Dojin blurred out of sight, vanishing into thin air. Panic gripped the agent as his target disappeared, only for a sneaky punch to slam into his gut, sending him staggering backward in pain. Fed up with the agent's persistence, Dojin began considering registering as a hero. After all, one of the agents had assured him that as long as he avoided shady or illegal activities, the control center wouldn't come after him. Curious, Dojin asked about something called the Rift, a question that left the agent visibly stunned. Here's the quick context. This world was dotted with countless passages connecting to another realm where strange monsters lived. From the corpses of those monsters came gemstones, harvested as valuable energy sources. Because of their importance, the government oversaw these passages to maintain strict control. Government-controlled passages were called gates. Uncontrolled or unsealed passages were known as rifts. Back with Dojin, he found it frustrating that agents followed him everywhere, accusing him of trespassing no matter which gate he entered. The poor agent explained that whenever an unregistered hero entered a gate, the control center was immediately notified and dispatched nearby agents. As for rifts, entering one was far riskier. Unlike gates, trespassing into a rift carried strict punishment, no warnings, no plea bargains. Dojin didn't care to hear more. Grabbing the agent by the face, he flung him aside like trash. By now, the man deeply regretted not calling headquarters earlier. This situation was far beyond his pay grade. As Dojin glanced back one last time, he thought about how pitifully weak the man was. The agent, clutching a fractured arm, shouted empty threats, promising to capture him and throw him in prison. The scene shifted to the gas and digital complex, Once a corporate hub, it had become the Hero Complex, a massive building where all trade in magic stones and dungeon spoils took place. These days, it was busier than ever. Dojin entered one of the stores that specialized in buying and selling stones. Behind the counter was a Gen Z clerk scrolling endlessly through social media. When Dojin announced he wanted to sell magic stones, the cunning shop owner immediately began boasting about his business, claiming this branch offered the highest prices in the country. Dojin placed his haul on the counter, a pile of low-grade stones still smeared with monster blood. The owner's face twisted in disgust, but he masked it and proceeded with the transaction. He politely asked if Dojin wanted coffee while the stones were being processed. Soon, Dojin sat sipping from a cup while the owner carefully scrubbed the blood off each gem. When the cleaning was done, the owner tallied the haul: 12 low-grade stones, 16 medium-grade ones, plus 5 higher-quality stones. After deducting a hefty 40% commission, Dojin would receive about 5.5 million won. Dojin wasn't happy. It didn't seem fair. He had done all the hunting, risked his life, and spent hours grinding. How could the shop owner think he deserved nearly half the profit? The man smugly insisted he was being generous, charging only 40% when competitors demanded at least 45%. Confident, he even dared Dojin to take his stones elsewhere, claiming no one would offer better. Dojin didn't buy it. He calmly began repacking his stones into his bag. Desperate, the owner grabbed his hand and demanded compensation instead: 300,000 won for appraisal, 10,000 for the coffee, and damages for the towel ruined by blood. Altogether, the man insisted Dojin owed him 350,000. Dojin wasn't budging. Seeing his demands ignored, the owner resorted to threats, summoning 3 C-class heroes he kept as guards. The heavy hitters barged in, ready to deal with any trouble. Dojin responded with a cold glare, locking eyes with the owner. Moments later, the scene cut to the shop owner's terrified, sweat-soaked face. His earlier arrogance had crumbled. Dojin had effortlessly dispatched the 3 guards, proving who the real powerhouse was. With the threat eliminated, Dojin calmly negotiated the commission down to 1%. No questions, no arguments. The owner could only nod in fear as the deal went through. Dojin walked out with a fat stack of cash earned through his fists. When he returned home, his grandmother and younger sister were stunned by the enormous amount of money. Grandma even suspected the bills might be fake. Dojin quickly covered it up with a lie, claiming the money came from lending cash to a friend whose business suddenly thrived. Grandma wasn't convinced her grandson had such a friend, but when Dojin insisted it was a childhood companion, she let the matter drop. Meanwhile, his sister was overflowing with pride. Thrilled by the sudden wealth, Dojin, playing the role of a caring brother, patted her head and gave her hope for the luxurious life ahead. She jumped around joyfully, celebrating their newfound fortune. Watching her, Dojin realized he was making real progress toward fulfilling the dying wish of Seo Dojin, the body's original owner, to give his grandmother and half-sister Yoon a safe and happy life. That boy had vanished before Dojin could ever speak to him, and when he awoke, he had become Seo Dojin. Now, his sole mission was to ensure the small family lived safely and comfortably. For that, he had his eyes set on the safest house in Korea, a home worth 110 billion yuan. For him, making money won't be an issue as long as he regains his original strength. This world shares many similarities with the one he came from, the one that was destroyed. The only major difference is that the rifts, gates, and monsters here are all slightly weaker than those in the world he once saw fall. To him, who once held the title of Sword God in his previous life, this place is nothing more than a sandbox. So far, he's only been fighting at 1/10 of his original power. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and the visitor says he wants to see Dojin. Bro stands up and decides to answer. As he opens the door, he finds 2 thugs standing outside. These guys are here to claim a debt. Dojin supposedly owes an insane 48 million. Seeing this, Dojin's sure these are loan sharks. They're from the company Dojin borrowed money from before he left this world for good. Though the amount was supposed to be just 5 million yuan originally, for his grandma's hospital bills, these guys are charging absurd interest and demanding 10 times the original amount in no time. They know he's been making money through gates lately, so they want him to cough up the cash since it's all documented in the contract. But the only repayment these bastards get is a jaw-shattering punch straight into the big guy's face. That single blow sends the thug flying, leaving his partner's jaw hanging in disbelief. With another punch that makes the bastard cry like a baby, Dojin tells him to deliver a message to his boss. Dojin is coming for a visit. The scene then cuts to a bustling shopping mall. There we see sweet little Lee Yoon lighting up in a teddy bear store. Dojin brought her here for a shopping spree. Today she's free to get anything she wants. You know, our boy wasn't always this soft-hearted in his previous life. It's the original Dojin's memories that revitalized his dry emotions. His heart warms seeing how kindly Dojin treated Yunyoung, even though she's only his half-sister. So now, he wants to keep doing the same, giving all the love he can muster for this little girl. The little one finally chooses a stuffed toy. She really wants a small but cute bunny. She picks it modestly, making sure she isn't being extravagant, but Dojin picks an even bigger stuffed toy for her. He doesn't want her to hold back at all. It's her day, and she can pick whatever her heart desires without thinking twice about money. They both treat themselves to some good food too. As they enjoy their meal, an unfamiliar voice suddenly calls out our boy's name. It's a middle-aged woman followed by a group of bodyguards. This chubby hag seems like yet another trash talker who loves to hate on our boy. First, she criticizes his lousy sense of fashion. Then, she questions the girl sitting next to him. She's bold enough to throw a jab, claiming he must have knocked someone up and had this girl just like how his own mother brought him into this world. Of course, these sharp insults infuriate our boy beyond measure. Meanwhile, Lee Yun-young has no clue who this lady is or why she's trash-talking so casually. The woman then promptly turns her attention to the girl and asks her name. The girl introduces herself as Lee Yun-young, which makes this hag realize she's Dojin's sister. Out of habit, the woman throws another jab at her clothes, calling her a mess. She doesn't even spare their deceased mother. All of this is gnawing at our boy's nerves badly, but for some reason, he holds it in, refusing to lash out despite her provocations. Even this ugly woman is shocked at how Dojin is keeping his composure, not falling for her traps. So she decides to go one step further. This vile woman is bold enough to ask a child if she knows the meaning of harlot. Well, that's the last straw. Dojin snaps and calls her an ugly woman from the tribe of orcs. Naturally, the woman is left wide-eyed and speechless, caught completely off guard. Let's add some context to why Dojin tolerated her this long. You see, Dojin was born an illegitimate child and lived in poverty. At the tender age of 7, his mother died, and he barely managed to reach his father's house. With his father marrying a new woman, he was shunned by everyone. Things worsened when his father's legitimate wife gave birth to a son, and Dojin was ignored completely. Eventually, he was kicked out of the very house he lived in, so he grew up with his half-sibling at his grandmother's home. As our MC reflects back, he feels pity for the original Dojin, who endured all this pain yet still tried to keep a smile on his face like nothing was wrong. But now, he wants to change everything. Seems this woman is his stepsister, which explains why he held back, but he won't tolerate her anymore. He recalls how he once shared a roof with this orc of a woman, and she's just as disgusting as ever. Not only is her personality vile and her appearance orc-like, she's also dumb as a rock. He crushes her spirit further by dropping brutal truths. She's a wreck with an inferiority complex, projecting her insecurities by calling others ugly. She's just a gold digger obsessed with appearances, and that's the reality the world should know. As he continues roasting her mercilessly, the entire shopping mall watches, captivated as though they're witnessing a show. The lady is furious and about to lose it. But then Dojin's stepmother arrives. Seeing her mom, the orc lady rushes over like the whiny brat she is, complaining how Dojin just shut her down with words. But her mother is aggravated by the whining and silences her with a cold glare. At first, I even thought the fat orc lady was his stepmom. The elegant woman turns her attention to Dojin and greets him with utmost grace, inviting him to return home and spend some time with family. But Dojin knows all too well this facade is fake. After all, she's the one who caused the most misery and unrest during the 12 years he lived with them. She continues bringing up memories Dojin never wants to recall, triggering his PTSD and putting him in full serious mode. With a tone colder than ice, our guy tells her to get lost. That's a major slap to her dignity being dismissed so sharply by someone younger. She twirls around and leaves with what little dignity she has left. She wasn't expecting him to clap back so hard. She's left wondering if this is really the same boy who used to lower his head even when she slapped him for no reason. Her daughter follows after her, their bodyguards tagging along like NPCs who just watched the main character cook. Let's shift back to our boy. It seems these two women totally ruined the moment he was having with Yongyong, so he decides to leave as well. His reaction to his stepfamily was intentional. He wanted to make one thing clear. The weak Dojin who couldn't speak up for himself is gone. It's time his trash family realizes that. We then cut to a Mercedes speeding down the road. Inside the car sit the stepmother and her daughter. The daughter is furious at her mother for leaving quietly instead of putting Dojin in his place. She vents her frustration and curses him for the humiliation they suffered. The mother, however, demands an answer from her manager. Why is Dojin still alive? The bald-headed subordinate has no clue. It doesn't match the reports. The woman snaps, screaming how it's impossible for him to be alive when they made sure the job was done. The poor man assures her he'll look into the matter again and this time make sure the job is executed properly. Meanwhile, the clueless daughter has no idea what her shady mother has been plotting all along. She's rattled just hearing her mom casually talk about killing. Eventually, the mother poses a question to her daughter, wondering if she has feelings for Dojin. This catches the spoiled pig off guard, making her blush and flustered. Actually, she's just worried about Dojun dying because if Grandpa or Dad find out, they'll all be in serious trouble. The mother grabs her daughter by the mouth so hard that she silences her, drilling into her to stay the hell away from her business. The mother is dead set on claiming Dojin's life with no plan to spare him, especially not after he dared to talk back to her. Getting rid of him is the best revenge she can think of. A decade ago, the world took a turn into chaos with the appearance of the rift. This terrifying dimension gave birth to monsters spawning from its portal, driven by the single objective of slaughtering humans on sight. Their terror never stopped. It was ceaseless and eventually demolished the world, leaving scars of destroyed cities engulfed in flames. However, just as the dark forces appeared, so too came the light in the form of valiant warriors known as heroes. With their emergence, the first discovery of mana stones was made from the bodies of defeated monsters. Back to the present, Dojin is on the move, reflecting on how mana quickly shifted the world's dependence from traditional energy sources. Because of their key role, nations centered their attention on the emerging rifts, essentially staking claim to them so they could extract resources. With the current state of the world, all industrialization is now completely reliant on the concept of gates and the strength of heroes. And because of that, the profession of a hero reaps enormous rewards. A consistent high salary can only be achieved by becoming a proper hero. Dojun arrives at his destination, the Yeongdongpo Capital establishment. He steps into the building, and at first glance, the boss and his cronies look like your average run-of-the-mill thugs trying to intimidate people with their ugly mugs. But Dojun stays completely chill about the situation. The boss puts out his cigarette and points out our boy's audacity. Not only did he beat the crap out of his goons, but he also had the guts to show his face at the door. It shows Dojun really doesn't give a flying fudge about anyone. He cleverly tells the organization's owner that, in reality, it's actually Dojun himself who has suffered the real loss. That statement sounds ridiculous to the boss, so he demands clarification. Dojun explains he's come here to receive his well-deserved compensation. After all, he's endured mental, physical, and material losses because of these clowns. With his strong, serious words, the boss notices one significant change in the boy's personality. Something is different. Dojun is no longer the soft-spoken spirit or gentle soul he once was. Added to that, this same kid destroyed the lackey the boss sent to his door. Naturally, the boss suspects Sale Dojun must have experienced a unique kind of awakening inside the gate. Despite this, the boss acts arrogant, telling Dojun his newfound confidence will become his undoing. The hypocrite accuses him of being overconfident and, to back up his claims, summons a group of grumpy men to intimidate him. Of course, he can pack all the muscle he wants, but compared to the experience of a sword god, they're practically insects. The boss keeps running his mouth, saying that even awakened people end up dying like dead weight, like low-class heroes. The funniest part is that he still assumes Seo Do-jun is nothing beyond the level of a D-class hero, and that his organization could easily stomp him. Meanwhile, Dojun lounges on the sofa, calm as ever, while five guys glare him down. Without a shred of hesitation, he orders the boss to sit the heck back down. The boss is astonished at his tone, especially when Dojun emphasizes with a serious face that he's not done talking. Hearing that, one of the men decides to grow a pair and challenge him. Amusingly, Dojun calmly removes his glasses, which only adds to their confusion, and then he gave the guy a punch straight into the guy's face. The poor dude is sent flying from the impact while his friends are struck dumb. But that's not all. The beating continues as Dojun knocks down another thug. Keep in mind, while he's dishing out punishment, he's also calmly making his points. He exposes the boss's secret shady business, operating under the guise of a money-lending firm. He decks an orange-haired punk while pointing out their counterfeit identification racket. Having landed the punch, he tells the boss he's searching for a hero ID to officially register and start making money. When the final guy swings at him, Dojun ducks and counters with triple the force, sending him to sleep. That's how he knocks out the entire group. His own special sleeping routine works 100% of the time. Dojun presses on with his demands, insisting on a foolproof identification that won't cause him trouble in the future. The boss is left starstruck at what just happened in a matter of seconds. Our Ride reminds him that he only has one day to forge it. Some of the men hadn't intervened, which is honestly a compliment since they're the kind of NPCs who'd usually challenge God at level 1. The boss is tripping hard, re-evaluating Dojun's strength. At the very least, this kid appears to be B-class. He's so lost in thought that Dojun has to snap him out of it. He accepts the job. Finally, Dojun grabs his shoulder politely but contrasts it with an intimidating expression. He wants to know if Hiju, his stepmother, ordered the hit on him. Of course that's exactly the case, as we already know from her earlier conversation with her daughter and assistant. The boss is tongue-tied until Dojun squeezes harder, making him yelp in pain. Even his cronies look helpless for their boss. Also, they should seriously change barbers. Eventually the boss breaks and reveals her heinous strategy. That cruel scheming woman wanted to drain Dojun's bank account, forcing him into financial ruin so severe that he'd have no choice but to take his own life. That is the very definition of an evil plan, especially against her own son even if cast aside. Those were her orders. Dojun listens, and after enough begging and crying, he releases the man, asking if that was also the reason they locked him inside the gate. The boss quickly claims innocence, insisting he had nothing to do with that. He even reveals he wouldn't have been paid if Dojun had died in the gate, which is at least a plausible reason. That alone gets Dojun thinking. He utters the name Kan Chio, the very man who brought him into the gate in the first place. Effectively, Dojun demands every piece of information about him by tomorrow. With his 2 demands made, he leaves politely, shifting the entire atmosphere of the room compared to when he first entered. After that conversation, Dojun is left in deep contemplation. The real Seo Dojun only ever had one desire. He wanted to protect his little sister and his beloved grandmother no matter what. On top of everything that happened, it just added another layer of misery and showed the kind of life the poor kid had to endure while being helpless. But not to worry, because the sword god was ready to do what he must in order to set the record straight. The following day, our boy was officially registered and he also received a B rank rating. Tapping the card on the machine proved its legitimacy as it synced his identity with the system. However, it warned him that his rank was still lower than the dangerous quest he was about to take. This was actually pretty annoying to our boy, who thought that maybe he should have forced the bastard to assign him a higher rank so he wouldn't run into these problems. Despite the system's repetitive warnings not to enter a gate far above his level, Dojun didn't care and went in anyway. Let's talk about the specifics of the Night Island gate. It was actually just a B rank gate, but that logic didn't mean a B rank hunter could survive it. Heroes were always recommended to be a class higher than the gate rank for mission safety. Anyway, the scale of the dungeon was considered rank D, which meant it was spread out and would be difficult for solo hunting. But the words risk and danger didn't exist in our boy's dictionary. If anything, the worst that could happen was that he'd have to face off against an entire fleet of monsters in a narrow tunnel with little to no room. Dojun smiled at his first opponent, a giant serpent with a chaotic purple aura. For most heroes, this would be a sign of terror, but for him it was a sign of good luck as he prepared his gauntlets to get the battle started. Oh, and by the way, the serpent had a bunch of its friends too. Anyway, they did their best to attack, but it was pointless because our boy was such a killing machine that he snatched and collected the mana stones like the monsters never even existed. The black killing viper was a class of monster known for its hyperactive paralysis poison that could knock anyone down even with the slightest contact. With that in consideration, Dojun charged, propelling himself at bullet speed, and launched a full swing. In a short span of time, he sliced and diced the creature all over its body, splashing blood until he severed the monster in half. With the creature defeated, Dojun noticed his equipment. The gloves he purchased ensured the poison didn't get in contact with him, and for the price of 300,000 yuan, they were holding their ground. Returning to the hunting session, Dojun turned his attention to 4 more of these ugly limbless lizards and began blasting right through their heads with his powerful speed. More and more blood splashed out until the vipers were sent to the afterlife. Dojun stood there, busy searching for a bunch of magic stones by clawing into the monster's flesh. To his disappointment, there weren't any around, but this was according to the rules of the previous world. In that world, these monsters only had a drop rate of 3% for mana stones. This meant he had to hunt down at least hundreds of them for good loot. Walking along, he discovered skeletons lying around. You might think it was the boss, but it's a huge-ass snake. Anyway, Dojun thought it was a good thing this big guy appeared because now he wouldn't have to worry about getting lost anymore. Spiraling into an immediate strike, he planned to end the battle quickly and return home, but then an unexpected thing happened. Despite having successfully landed a brute strike, his punch didn't have any effect on the creature. Bro just gave him a tattoo on the head instead. While he was in the air and unable to dodge, the creature bashed him into the wall with its tail. Dojun sat there, crash-landed. It probably gave him a reality check about the boss monster's strength. The creature whipped out its poisonous fangs and hissed at him like the average girlfriend when she's hungry. It attempted to bite him down, but luckily he evaded. Using the momentum of his evasive maneuver, he bolted right back into motion with a powerful punch that connected with the creature's body and left more cracks against its hard shell. From this second attack, one thing was made clear to him. The boss monster had an unusually tough exterior, making it a greater challenge than the rest of the vipers he had disposed of. The shell was so powerful at his current level that he couldn't penetrate it with one strike alone. This reversed the situation on him, making him question if he should aim for a different battle strategy. At his original strength, the sword god would have mopped the floor with this beast. But then suddenly, he noticed something, the sword of the warrior who lost his life fighting the boss, and now you guys are about to know why he's called the sword god and not the fist god. Even though the weapon was extremely worn out after the fight, he grabbed hold of it, believing that his sword was only as competent as its wielder. With that knowledge in mind and the blade armed in his hand, he walked toward the monstrous snake. The creature propelled itself forth to strike him down again, bursting with incredible speed. Dojin responded by leaping high into the air, proudly declaring that the creature should be honored that he was going all out to kill the beast with a sword. Despite the sword's crap condition, this guy unleashed so many flashing cuts in the span of a few strikes that the snake's body was left eviscerated. The serious fight turned into a funny conclusion, with the snake dying in the background while our boy's sword was reduced to dust. It was a good thing he wiped the creature out before the blade gave up completely. With the boss monster dead, Dojin thought of a smart idea that I don't really see many other protagonists implement. He took one of the creature's fangs, believing it could be refined into a nice short sword. Considering this his reward for the journey, he exited the gate. By the time he stepped out, it was already a starry night outside. He had spent more time in the B-Ranks gate than he thought, and with the way things turned out, it only pushed him further to pursue and restore his strength back to full. He was also a bit happy that his old friends didn't get to see this weaker version of him, because that would have been embarrassing. Back from the hunt, he went to appraise and sell the magic stones. Before him, there was another hero who came to present his great stash of mana stones. The cheap-ass receptionist treated him like crap and pointed out that the commission rate was the same at 40%. Even the innocent guy could sense the scam behind that overly high rate. He even called it out, stating his concerns and calling himself a normal guy. The receptionist, just like he did with Dojin, clarified that their rate was actually the lowest among all the appraisal traits. The gate sense rate was 5%, but that was without taxes. From the perspective of the sleazy appraiser, this was a great deal for heroes to earn good money. The cash was handed to the hero, who didn't really complain much except for concerningly asking about the dude's messed up face. The funny thing was how this guy was still repeating the same script even after getting his face bashed in. Bro played it off, stating that a psychopath first obliterated his guards and then left him with this treatment. The hero thought it was actually the fault of the receptionist for keeping low-ranking guards around at the Seek rank level. After all, rank wasn't the only thing that mattered in their world. Skill played a huge role too. Rank was actually a false representation of one's abilities and only updated to keep the system intact. The hero wisely mentioned that people of the same rank had a huge variance in skills and abilities, so they couldn't all be treated the same. The joker of a receptionist just wanted him to stop yapping and leave already, which he did, offering to help the little dude out if he ever needed something. As he left, our boy walked right past him, looking as cold as ever. Upon seeing him, the receptionist flinched and bugged the hell out. He pointed at Dojin, shouting that this was the psychopath that made a mess out of him. Turning back to face them both, the hero was actually pretty impressed. He noticed our boy's lean physique for his height. Still, the fact that he made a mess of the guard spiraled the man to gear up for a fight, questioning if he was the troublemaker. The one thing I liked about this guy was that he wasn't offended over petty reasons. He genuinely believed that Dojin was misusing his powers as a hero by bullying civilians in his normal life. The receptionist enjoyed the show, knowing this guy was actually a 7-year veteran hero. If something happened here, the man had plenty of connections he could use to drag Dojin down by name. Without giving a damn about who he was, our boy turned back and simply told the boomer to piss off. This only provoked the guy further, because now it really looked like Dojin was challenging him. Dojin asked if the guy was looking for exact revenge. Hearing those words, the veteran hero was provoked. However, being a responsible hero and with all his experience, he knew it was unwise to take battles against other heroes, as it almost always resulted in deaths. It's actually an even higher rate of death than a fight against monsters. Recalling that fact, Dojin calmly turned his back, leaving the receptionist speechless. Dojin turned to the sleazy appraiser and asked if he had a problem he wanted to bring up. Before the guy could answer, he tossed a bag full of magic stones to appraise and convert into money. These precious, shiny stones were all high-grade magic stones, which really begged the question of who this guy really was from the receptionist's perspective. After calculating, the total came to 150 million. It seemed like a lot at first glance, but to Dojin, it was far too little for a single day's worth of hunting. He asked for the cash, but the receptionist reminded him of the commission rate they needed to calculate beforehand, which drew a scary look from our boy. Remembering that the rate was only 1% in their deal, he cooled down and told the guy to hand over the rest of the amount. Inside the mind of the hilarious appraiser, he wanted to beat the hell out of the guy for having so much audacity, but that was only in his imagination. Speaking of which, the receptionist explained that there had to be approval from upper management for such a huge amount. Without wasting another breath, Dojin demanded that he get the approval immediately. The guy quickly phoned his boss, whispering the details of the situation. But before he could smoothly wrap up a deal, Dojin snatched the phone and directly told the boss to hurry up with the payment. The boss was fine with doing so, but asked for the phone to be handed back to the employee. Returning it with pleasure, Dojin accidentally smashed the phone into the wall. The employee trembled at the sight of his shattered device as Dojin instructed him to quickly prepare the money now that things were cleared up. And that's how the receptionist prepared numerous bags full of cash for the transaction. By the end, the guy was left devastated at being forced in such a way. Maybe you feel pity for him, but remember, he scams nearly half of what ordinary heroes earn after risking their lives. He's a scumbag. 10 minutes later, the boss stormed into the store, enraged that his employee wasn't answering the phone. The hilarious part, the receptionist immediately threw in the towel and resigned on the spot. The boss then saw the smashed phone on the wall, giving him a clear idea of what went down. Seeing this, he pulled out his own phone to call Juyeon, requesting that she come at once. Juyeon appeared as a famous young woman with striking purplish-pink hair. She was so recognizable in public that people cheered her name, treating her like a celebrity, not to mention she looked stylish as hell in her outfit. She arrived at the store, stunning the receptionist with her presence, greeting him with a smile. There was a big reason why everyone was making such a fuss about her. She was the country's 4th S-rank hero, nothing short of amazing. Rumors had spread that she was the niece of the boss, but he still questioned what she was doing here. Confirming the claims, Juyeon explained that she came on behalf of her uncle's request to deal with a reckless hero. Intrigued, the stylish S-ranker sat down, ready to hear what was going on. In the next scene, we find our boy with his absolutely ripped body meditating in the sun. It's true that he's been hunting all day, and yet the rewards he reaped weren't amazing. With things going this way, he was worried about the future. First and foremost, he needed to reach a level where he could clear S-rank gates on his own. That meant training to restore his original strength. Dojin's biggest challenge in this current life was that, unlike his previous world, the mana density here was thin. Even if he did his best to gather mana at his current rate, it would take at least 3 years to come close to his original strength longer if things got rough. On the bright side, he could aim for better battle equipment. But the issue was that even the worst equipment costs hundreds of millions, making it a waste of money. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine as he sensed a dangerous presence. Fixating his sight, he grabbed the little girl Lee Yoon-young at full speed and demanded that everyone go inside immediately. Back inside, he shut the room as his grandma anxiously questioned what was happening. The entire structure shook with a loud quake, making his grandmother flinch and ask in terror if it was an earthquake. Little Lee Yoon-young panicked, but the truth was something only our boy knew. This wasn't just an earthquake, it was something else. Dojin sensed the sharp, violent energy outside. A rift had just cleaved open into their world, manifesting directly on top of their house. Rushing to handle the problem, he told his loved ones to stay inside as the situation outside was too dangerous. At full speed, he cut toward the entrance of the rift. The last thing he heard was the cries of his grandma and his sister calling out his name. The scene switched to the Soul Hero Association, where members were immediately alerted to the sudden emergence of a rift over the Maple region. It appeared just 63 days after the last one. Realizing that the White Lion Guild was the closest to Maple, the manager instructed his staff to contact the guild and alert nearby heroes to contain the situation. Upon closer inspection, he discovered the rift had appeared on top of a residential home. This was a tricky situation because if a civilian entered the rift, they were practically guaranteed death. Not to mention, the rift wouldn't allow anyone else to enter afterward. And if the person inside died, it would trigger a monster wave in 10 days, wreaking havoc on the region. The wave would become so uncontrollable that Soul's safety would be fully jeopardized. The manager was curious about the person who entered the rift. Turns out, they knew Seo Dojin had taken action, as he was the resident of the home. According to his grandma, he entered to protect his family. From this, they assumed he wasn't a hero, which complicated matters, because the chances of an ordinary civilian returning from a rift were nearly impossible. This left the entire staff in despair, helpless to act. The next scene showed Dojin's furious stepmother, Heeju, seething at the news of his awakening. She couldn't believe it. Her assistant reported that while he hadn't officially registered with the Hero Association, they confirmed he awakened from his last gate experience. This frustrated her, because Konkol was supposed to finish the job, but instead made her target stronger. Enraged, she smashed her fist on the table, questioning why they couldn't manage to kill him themselves. The fact that they also took money for a failed job only fueled her anger. Roaring at Manager Lee, she declared her frustration with Kong Call, sending him a message. If he didn't kill Dojun personally, he'd owe her 10 times the amount in return. But to her surprise, her assistant revealed they may not even need to contact him anymore. A new rift had appeared directly on top of Dojun's house, and since he entered, it was almost certain he wouldn't make it out alive. Hiju was delighted, calming down as she ordered the assistant to monitor the situation until more news arrived. Meanwhile, our boy had just arrived in the rift's domain. It was a forest, specifically the forest of Patishua, the same place he once enjoyed in his youth. The forest was recreated exactly as he remembered, even the rich mana inside carrying the same weight. Following the path, he smiled at the sight of the mighty world tree. This divine tree exuded pure mana, the very core of the world's stability. When the old world fell, it began with this tree being incinerated, forever disrupting the flow of mana. But here in this rift dimension, the tree remained intact, exactly as he remembered it. Though unaware of the cause, one thing was certain: he had a chance to reclaim the mana he lost by absorbing it from the tree. Meditating beneath its excellent flow of mana, our boy's strengths became clearer and clearer. He spent more than 3 days sitting exactly like this, forgetting to eat, drink, or even tend to his bodily needs. 10 whole days passed, and all he could focus on was harmonizing his breathing. By the end of the 10th night, trouble came looking for him and disrupted his meditation. These alien-like creatures were called the Volcana, and they'd come to burn the tree, just like they did in the past. Only this time, our boy was there to prevent the tragedy from happening again. The creatures lunged forward to attack him while Dojin regretted not having a water element sword to wipe them all out with ease. The burning monsters roared as they made their way toward him, alone with Manda now, so much so that he no longer cared about a weapon. He himself was the weapon, and those hands were rated E for everyone. Extending his hand toward the monsters, he exerted so much authority from his mana alone that it knocked one of them down. The second creature was stunned by his ability. Let's break down what just happened. What he used there is called mana release, and it's not exactly telekinesis. It's a blaster-type attack that detonates raw mana as a strike. It had been a long time since he used this ability in such a way, considering he had been low on reserves all this time. Anyway, the volcanic creatures weren't done yet. To retaliate, they released charged blasts from their mouths. These pulsing laser beams shot straight toward our boy, who appeared calmer than ever. His mana alone was enough to shield him from damage. Stepping toward the creatures, ignited with a burst of mana, he remarked that he'd finally protected the world tree. Now he was ready to play around a bit and enjoy the fruits of his training. The ugly bastards prepared another energy blast attack, but our boy quickly caught 2 of them and forced their mouths shut. Their own attack built up inside until it exploded, leaving behind headless corpses of flames. The bodies withered away, dropping 2 valuable magic stones for him to claim, but that was only a couple of them down. Dojin was ecstatic, thrilled to unlock something called the Eternal Ember. After defeating these monsters, he joyfully cut his way through and smacked them down with a grin. He was finally glad to steal a massive load of mana stones from them. The one-sided slaughter continued until he wiped out every last one. Dojin had basically hit the jackpot with how many stones they were dropping. Among them he also discovered a small coin or seed glowing gold. This was the Eternal Ember, which he picked up in his hand. With this, he regained control of even more of his power as he crushed Ember and unlocked its flames. Normally, the ideal strategy here would be to keep absorbing mana from the World Tree. However, his body had already reached its physical limit from mana absorption. The second method was absorbing the Ember itself, which completely altered the state of his mana, transforming it into fire mana. And he did exactly that as his body erupted with a rush of flame energy. In his previous life, he had no need for this and ignored the Eternal Ember entirely, but now, it was required for him to absorb them fully, and it took about 10 minutes just to complete one. Luckily, he'd collected a whole batch, so his goal was to absorb as many as possible. Meanwhile, the appearance of the rift sparked public interest. Reporters swarmed around his house while agents and association staff protected the area. Bang Sung-woo was furious at one man's arrogance for entering the rift prematurely. Then, we met another key figure, Kim Hyun, our protagonist, with blue hair. He sympathized with Dojin's decision to save his sister, but Sung-woo didn't buy it. Instead, he accused Dojin of rushing in like a greedy fool, ignoring the consequences. If Dojin were to die in the rift, the entire place would become a detonation ground for monsters to pour out. That was the real issue. Kim Hyun asked for Gilma's input, but apparently Gilma had decided to just stick to protocol. Kim Hyun also questioned the recent rise of rifts appearing across the globe in places like the US, China, Switzerland, Turkey, and the UK. Gilma was having a hard time managing them all at once, especially since this phenomenon didn't happen every day. Some nations easily contained the threat, but South Korea was facing a disaster all thanks to one man. Sungwoo was so pissed that he wanted to beat the crap out of the guy inside and was begging the rift to spit him out already. Speaking of the gargantuan Purple Gate, 28 days had passed since its first appearance, the same amount of time Dojin had been inside. The Hero Association was panicking, already classifying the threat as a level 1 wave. Dojin's identity hadn't been revealed yet for privacy reasons, so the public only knew him as an ordinary person. But while the world was clueless, the boss of a money-lending organization caught on quickly. His assistant confirmed the report, verifying Dojin's involvement. Kim Yi-in, the right-hand man of the president Wang Chang, was curious about Dojin's chances of survival. The assistant claimed that an ordinary person had less than a 1% chance of survival. But the mere mention of Dojin as ordinary made Chang laugh. After all, that same ordinary person put his men in the hospital and left them bandaged for weeks. From the world's perspective, they were vastly underestimating him. Chang then asked about the survival chances of an awakened individual. For that, his assistant explained it depended on the hero's level, making it hard to judge without proper data. Even Chang admitted that combat ability differed from survival ability, and a rift made things far more complicated. But one thing was certain, the bastard hadn't changed his ways. Chang wanted to protect Dojin's family, but not for noble reasons. Nah, this scumbag intended to sell the organs of his loved ones in case he didn't make it back. And even if he did, he was going to pin the blame of death on him for taking care. This guy was the embodiment of a leech. The scene transitioned to the mesmerizing world tree. Here our boy was going full speed into his training arc, as his body was now thriving with flame mana. He didn't even know how much time had passed, but he'd been grinding by absorbing hundreds of the fire stones. With this, he'd acquired so much fire mana that he could use and manipulate it in any way he deemed fit, not to mention, his resistance to the flames had increased as a side effect. Comparing his past self with his current self on the basis of the fire attribute alone, he thought he had surpassed his past self in a small capacity by mastering this ability. Embracing the world tree, he shared a tender moment with it. It had always served him in his time of need, even in the past and even now. Because of that, Dojin was grateful for everything it had done for him. As for his mana stones, he made a small bag using vines to store them all. With the stones collected and stashed, Dojin fully understood that he'd probably never get to see the angelic tree again. But even still, he was hoping for their paths to cross if the divine tree ever found itself in danger, because when that happened, he would be ready to protect it with his life. That night, Dojin finally stepped out into the outside world, emerging from the rift as a whole. Luckily, he didn't sense anyone to be around, suspecting that most people probably thought he had already died inside, and that a monster wave would pop out at any time. However, he did detect the presence of someone strong nearby. Deciding to chase them down, he rushed to find the source. Shortly afterwards, he stumbled across the two agents, one pissed off and the other relaxed, both Kim Hyun and Sungwoo from last time. Now he understood that these guys probably represented the association from their outfit alone, which meant in the off chance he got caught, things would get really problematic. To combat that issue, he whirled up a ball of flame and chucked it into the air with a forceful lunge. That attack wound up finding its way across the building, resulting in a loud explosion upon detonation. Both Kim Hyun and Sungwoo were on red alert the moment they heard the crashing sound. Realizing that it was actually fire, they decided to chase after it. There they discovered a bunch of people standing in horror. Sungwoo questioned what the hell was going on in the chaos. Meanwhile, our boy was impressed with his flame powers so far. Their precision was good, so they would do him wonders. In the memory of his old friend called Tusk, he wondered if the mage would be impressed by his current level of flames. After all, Tusk was known to be the strongest fire mage on the continent, and they shared a good bond. Suddenly, Kim Hyun's sharp senses alerted him to look for the rift. It appeared to be acting up, and right before their eyes it disappeared into the mist. Both of the agents rushed to the site to see what was going on. When they arrived, they couldn't believe that the rift's connection to their world was no more. As for our boy, he was just making his way to his next destination without any problems. News broke out the following morning concerning the state of the rift that lasted for a month in Mapo. It was announced that the rift disappeared 29 days after Seo Dojun entered the zone, proving the concerns of the Hero Association to be wrong about the monster wave. They had no idea about the unexpected disappearance of the rift, and they were currently investigating what went down. They also had trouble dealing with the cause of the fire that broke out at the time of the rift's disappearance in a junkyard. Now, this led most people to believe that Seo Dojin was dead, and that this was just the consequence of his own actions. Unbeknownst to them, our boy was hidden in plain sight, observing the conflicting opinions of the people, as some were sympathizing with the boy who lost his life. Unfortunately, the disappearance of the rift was devastating news for our MC. He was heartbroken that he couldn't interact with the World Tree anymore. Even though he couldn't protect the World Tree, there was still one other thing he could protect in his life. This brings us right back to the HCS capital. Inside, the idiots were busy celebrating the death of Dojun, believing they could easily get rid of the old granny and his sister afterwards. Jang was just the kind of guy to squeeze people to death. After all, one bastard even talked about letting the little sister grow up so they could use her in other ways. While they were chatting without policing their own words, a familiar voice greeted them and demanded to see their boss. The scene cut there, and we shifted to Chang humming and going about his day, satisfied that Dojun was finally out of the way and dead for good. His assistant reviewed their appointments for today. Apparently he was free for the most part except for a lunch with another CEO. Hearing that, he was happy because tonight he could enjoy partying to his heart's content at a club under Miss Kang. It was basically senseless chatter until he stepped into the building, and as he climbed his stairs he found his men being tossed around like playthings. Their blood was splattered everywhere, and the cause of it all was someone he presumed to be dead. A boy threw him to the ground and told the guy to crawl back to him like a dog. That bone-chilling order made the president of the company quiver. Our boy acted like the real leader of the group and took his seat in the chair. He then repeated his command to the ignorant Chang, who was still processing the weight of that shameless order. Without wasting time, he crawled like a dog. Ruthless as ever, Dojun then ordered him to bark, as he deserved to be treated like an animal. His loud and clear command had Chang whining in humiliation. It took him a second to bark successfully, but our boy was not satisfied. He personally made sure to turn him into an animal by forcing him to bark repeatedly for everyone to hear. The president was reduced to being less than human, just like the people he once treated that way. Dojun pointed out that scumbags like him only act obedient on the surface, but end up backstabbing you the moment they get a chance. Declaring his filthy name, he chillingly told the man that his life had been filled with experiences dealing with second-rate humans like him. Pleading and begging for mercy, Chang promised to serve like a loyal dog if necessary. But Dojun had heard enough and delivered a heavy slap across his face. Just that single strike was enough to knock the wind out of him and make him spurt blood. His assistant watched the scene unfold until his name was called. Dojun addressed him as the new boss of the company and advised him to stop working under a bastard like Chang. Knowing how easily men like this turn their backs, he ordered the assistant to kill Chang with his full permission. Of course, it was a task too much for a competent servant like him. He apologized and objected, stating that their leader had many connections, so things would get really bad if he was the one appointed boss instead of Chang. On his behalf, the assistant pleaded with Dojun to spare the guy just one more time. However, Dojun didn't want to play around with meaningless words in front of them. He suggested wrapping Chang's body in a barrel and erasing all evidence by shoving it into the endless ocean. After all, that was exactly the kind of thing these guys excelled at doing. Seeing as the boss's men weren't willing to comply, our boy took a different approach. Dojun threatened the entire group that he'd toss everyone into the gate as monster food if they didn't carry out his order. Just the mere mention of that had Chang reduced to a pathetic mess. He couldn't take it anymore and kept begging for his life, promising he wouldn't ever betray and would always serve under Dojun. Now, this put the hero in a bit of contemplation. Although he could kill Chang right here and rid himself of all his problems, something about him had changed in this life. Admitting it himself, Dojun had grown softer compared to his merciless past self. So, this time he agreed, offering the man a hand. I just know Chang is about to become religious as heck after this, praying he never gets on Dojun's nerves again. He went on to shake the hero's hand, promising to serve unconditionally from now on. But wait, something was strange. Why was his hand engulfed in steaming hot flames? Yes, though Dojun had softened, he was still ruthless. Looking him dead in the eyes, he reminded the scumbag that this was his final chance. Dojun then proceeded to rip his hand off clean, reducing it to a charred paste. By the end of the meeting, he walked away, ignoring the agonized cries of the president. He did leave them with a final warning. If even a single one of them dared interfere with his family again, Dojun would personally ensure their deaths. As for their new job, they were now forever responsible for protecting his family. Officially speaking, the man known as Seo Dojun was just a blip in existence, one that vanished along with the rift. In reality, he's currently dining at a local McDonald's. The government, the Hero Association, and all kinds of media outlets quickly moved past him like yesterday's news. They all treated the civilian who entered the rift as a dead man. Even if he came out and told the world he was alive, no one would buy it. Furthermore, surfacing after a solo rift mission would only bring headaches and trouble his way. That subdued dog, Huangchang, is currently helping him find a new, suitable house. For the time being, he can afford to move leisurely. Dojin finally got the chance to feed his sister some delicious fast food. He also informed her of their plan to move out to a better neighborhood, and she couldn't be any happier. She can now go to kindergarten like kids her age and enter elementary school next year. When the topic of school came up, little Young's mood took a turn for the worse. Dojin was alarmed. He's used to slaughtering abominable beasts, but coddling a kid isn't in his arsenal. He was taken aback when his sister confessed how other kids tease her for being an orphan. Hearing his adorable sister's plight broke Big Bro Dojin's heart. If she doesn't want to associate with the mean kids, she doesn't have to. Those little bastards will get what's coming to them eventually. Finding out that she wouldn't have to attend kindergarten to be bullied anymore, Young was hyped. Inwardly, Dojin is devising a plan to send his little sis to a prestigious private school where no one would dare look down on her. That night, Seo Dojun found out that Kim Yang-gu had stashed his grandma and sister in some random motel while he was stuck inside the rift. That bastard almost broke his back trying to apologize. He reasoned that the motel is under the management of their company, so it's safer than any other place. Dojin doesn't have the energy to mess with lackeys tonight, so he just enters the room and sees his grandma once more. Little Young pounced on him with a bear hug, and Grandma held his hand with tears streaming from her eyes. She's just glad to see her grandson come back alive. At first the hardened warrior was stunned, but once he felt the warmth coming from his family, he accepted the love they had for him with a smile. Little Young has taken a liking to McDonald's, so they've been dining in that absolutely real place a lot. Today, she asked questions about Big Bro's job being a hero. When asked if she likes having a hero for a brother, Young nonchalantly answered that she does not. While it's cool that heroes are strong and cool, they are also constantly in danger when fighting terrifying monsters. Sometimes they even die. And little Young just wants her brother to live with grandma and herself for a long time. Dojin had been so used to mindless bloodshed. Having someone worried about his well-being is quite a new feeling for him. In the harsh world of the past, he was the last human survivor. He fought monsters and creatures beyond your wildest dreams. In the process, he lost a lot of things. Now that he's given a second chance in a different world, something incredibly precious has appeared by his side. Feelings he had long forgotten are coming back to the surface. In this world, maybe he can live happily. Maybe he can just live a quiet life with joy and love. While he was feeling fuzzy and warm on the inside, Korea's Hero Association was in shambles. Kim Hein, founder of the Korea Hero Association and director of the World Hero Federation, has been stressing over the recent rift incident, or the lack thereof. Their best people have investigated the site, but no new information has been found. Feeling clueless about the state of his territory is frustrating the founder. It's not far-fetched to believe that a spontaneously disappearing rift could potentially reappear at any time. His assistant tried to agree with his worries. She thought it would have been better if a wave had occurred. At least then they wouldn't have to worry about unknown variables. Director Kim cut her off before he got angrier. While he's worried about uncertainties, he thinks it's fortunate that no one was harmed. Natai Wang is one of the top 100 respected and strongest heroes in the world. It's widely speculated that he would easily be elected with the most votes in history if he ran for president. His words and influence could easily topple domestic conglomerates if he wanted to. Thankfully, his interests lie in neither the power of a nation's leader nor the wealth of a conglomerate. The only thing he cares about is the safety of his people. In other words, he's a real one. Even if it takes time, he wants a more thorough investigation covering the rift's perimeter. The residents around the nearby area have already agreed to sell their properties to the association, so that shouldn't be a problem. As a consolation, Taewon wants to offer those people more than the market price for their homes. That's the least they could do after causing such inconvenience. All reliable sources have relayed that multiple rifts have occurred in different countries. No matter how you look at it, something must be going on. The United States and China have already entered the control stages of their rifts. Among major nations, the United Kingdom is facing the biggest problem. While reliable and veteran heroes had been dispatched to clear the other rifts, the United Kingdom squad was simply garbage. Speaking of them, the month-long mission to get rid of the UK rift has finally crumbled in a glaring defeat. The UK rift wave occurrence has officially begun. The city and its people are going about their day like they normally would. Amongst the crowd was Seo Dojin, blending in with the pedestrians. Today his destination is his favorite shop in the hero complex. When he entered the door, the dude manning the counter gave him a greeting by instinct but choked upon seeing his face. Every strand of hair on his body stood in terror upon seeing the black-haired young man. Today, his manager is in the store, so he won't have to deal with this sadistic customer alone. The manager promptly closed the paper he was reading and lifted his gaze. His voice was controlled but tinged with anger. This is the guy who's been forcing his pushover cashier into buying low-grade crystals. Dojun lazily removed his backpack and tossed the whole thing on the ground. It's actually good that the manager is here, so the sale of his magic crystals would proceed faster. Mr. Manager expected another batch of low-grade crystals to spill on the floor. He's not interested in such small-time business. Dojun doesn't like being turned away when all he wants is fair trade. The manager or any other sane business owner cannot afford to accept just a 1% fee. It would be better if the young man just left. Dojun asserted that refusing to do business with him would be a massive mistake that Mr. Manager would regret. The manager continued shooing the young man away, not even bothering to look at the bag. This is the last warning he will give before things go down. In response, Dojun kicked the backpack down, spilling its contents on the tiles. Being experienced crystal traders, both the cashier and the manager immediately recognized the properties of those rocks. That crude bag was actually filled with Hero's magic crystals, a legendary treasure that money cannot buy. Dojun has a rough idea of how much these things are worth. He knows he's holding premium stuff. You see, the Hero's magic crystal was used by an infamous Mexican drug lord, Corrorsman, in New Age drug manufacturing. One night, a laboratory accident changed the course of his life and the world's perspective on such a little rock. The Hero's magic crystal caused Corrorsman to awaken as a powerful hero. Since then, the crystal has become a priceless item for hero awakenings and mana enhancement. Such an incredibly rare energy source can be classified as an ultra-high-end product. As a power move, Dojun ordered the schmucks to pack their stuff back up, and he left. Mr. Manager quickly changed his dismissive and arrogant tone into a welcoming one. He even escorted the young man to their VIP seats and offered some drinks, while his cashier polished the crystals. Dojun liked reversing the situation on its head. 1 second he was being driven away. The next he was sipping on some iced beverage. His opening demand was full price with a 0.5% commission. As soon as the manager expressed a sign of balking, he threatened to pull the deal. In prior trades, Dojun agreed to 1%. Now he's lowering that already abysmal rate even lower. Frankly, he's just doing that out of annoyance. In response, the manager lowered his head and tried to give the sincerest apology he could muster. Well, Dojun is tired of hearing empty apologies. They can either accept his rate, or he'll take his business elsewhere. It's that simple. At the counter, the cashier is inwardly cursing Dojun for being such a rude prick. Seeing that his acting wouldn't convince the kid to give him a bigger cut, the manager locked in and gave a lengthy lecture about magic crystal markets and pricing. Dojun doesn't have time to listen to such long-winded yapping though. He finished his drink and got up from his seat, making the manager panic. Feeling the deal of a lifetime slipping away from his fingers, the manager offered a 9% commission. It did not work, so he proposed 8%. This continued from 8 to 7, 6, and 5. In this range, his shop won't be making any profit at all. While the manager was in the pits of despair, Seo Dojun pounced and agreed to settle for 1% out of respect for their past dealings. Inwardly, the manager wanted to scream and curse the blatant extortionist. He just couldn't bear to let go of the product. The next words that came out of Dojun's mouth nearly made the manager piss his pants in excitement. Aside from the one he brought today, he has about 7 more bags of those priceless crystals. With that being said, the contract was quickly produced and signed. After a few minutes of officiating the deal, 67 billion won entered Seo Dojun's bank account. That's about $48 million. At this rate, his 110 billion won house doesn't seem so far off. The problem is that getting more high-grade magic crystals through normal gates is a time sink. If he could find a way to freely travel through rift zones, he could easily farm treasures like a madman. While looking at his phone screen, an administrative message was sent out to everyone in the country. The wave outbreak in the southern region of the United Kingdom had been finally announced to the general public. In the meantime, everyone is banned from traveling to the UK. After reading about a real problem in the real world, Dojun lost interest in messing with the manager of the shop.